"Vincent, where were you last night?" I inquired, observing my 2-3-year married hubby fumbling in the kitchen with his athletic bag. Counter. "Karen, I told you I had to stay late with a customer." She required further assistance with her training for flexibility, Vincent said, avoiding eye contact as he reached for his protein shake. Something about his speech. My stomach turned up after doing some flexibility training. I wasn't gullible about the world. Additionally, following work in human bright-rise systems resources for 15 years, I was able to identify a falsehood from a meeting space. The tells from my hubby were increasingly visible like a neon sign. His avoidance of eye contact, the anxious clearing his throat, and the majority of revealingly the subtle vanilla aroma scent that was unquestionably not mine, holding on to his exercise attire. "Vince, that's 3 nights this week. Sundale must be seeing a boom in business." As I stirred my coffee, I remarked, "Fitness, intentional serenity, at 52. Vincent had always taken pride in his body. Even now, his graying laugh lines and temples couldn't conceal the fact that he continued to draw attention to. He worked as a personal trainer at the gym instructor. However, those heads he was turning lately appeared to be becoming younger and youthful, and his justifications were becoming increasingly thinner. "You are aware of the situation. Summer will hear soon. Everyone wants to lose weight," he stated, planting a kiss on my forehead in that informal manner that had taken the role of actual love years ago. In addition, the money will help with the house payments. I saw him walk out of the kitchen, his pickup truck roaring to the window, life in Phoenix on our driveway, Arizona. Already, the scorching desert sun was at 8 a.m., guaranteeing another burning day. Vincent retreated, and I saw something that caused my blood to boil. He was chilly than our air conditioner. Vincent didn't hum until he was truly pleased about something, and it certainly wasn't our morning dialogue. I made the decision to do a little that night. A research of my own. Although I slipped outside to his shower truck. The heat of July continued to radiate from the metal, causing me to narrow my eyes as I opened the door on the driver's side. The scent of his perfume blended with the interior with something more feminine and nicer. I checked by running my hands under the chairs, the glove box, searching for any confirmation my increasing misgivings. My fingers then closed around. Something tiny and jammed like a tube. I took it out from beneath the driver's seat and gazed at it in the gloomy illumination from personal lubricant in the garage, the costly type. The generous Vincent, and without a doubt, I stopped using since our private lives had dried up as much as the surroundings of Arizona. My hands shook a little while I grasped the proof of what I was already aware of in my heart. I sat in the garage in my car for gazing at the tube for a number of minutes in my hands. After 23 years of union, this is what it had arrived at. I considered every indication I had disregarded. The new clothing, the recent surge in protein interest substances that claimed to increase liveliness and vigor, how he began doing more laundry and showering for longer periods of time. Vincent was pleasant from the beginning. I was drawn to him when we first met at a fitness course at a community college in 2001. At the age of 24, I had just left my human. He was 29 and enrolled in a resources degree program, currently employed as a trainer with aspirations. One day, he hopes to operate his own gym. There was something about him that made everyone feel as if they were the most significant individual in the space. If he was assisting, and older women are taught to use the ELP, or instructing a novice how to correctly lift weights as a teenager, I used to adore that aspect of him. I like seeing his smile when he discussed assisting others in changing their confidence and their bodies. 2 years later, we were married in a little ceremony in a Sedona resort, encircled by large dreams and red rocks. For many years, we discussed having children, perhaps purchasing a larger home, perhaps even the gym he had always desired. However, at some point, those dreams faded, and the gym never came to pass, since Vincent was never able to save enough funds or make a commitment to a business idea. Children didn't arrive because we could never agree on a time. Then all of a sudden, we were in our 40s, and the discussion simply ceased. The larger home remained a pipe dream as we had trouble paying off the mortgage on our little home with 3 bedrooms in a respectable area around Camelback Mountain. Began to observe changes about 6 months. Vincent started working later and acquiring additional clientele, which ought to have been favorable to our financial situation. But when he arrived, he wasn't worn out. He appeared energetic, almost exuberant, at home. He began purchasing new sportswear, pricey ones from companies I'd never heard of. He updated his mobile device and grew protective of it and carried it with taking him to the restroom while maintaining his face down while eating dinner. Next came the strange phone calls he would go outdoors to take, asserting that they were from customers who have inquiries about scheduling. The way he began discussing one, specifically, a young woman client, Kylie, who was truly committed to her quest for fitness and necessary specific care for her particular objectives. I'd never been the envious type. During our formative years, I felt safe in our partnership and pleased that the other, my husband, was deemed attractive by ladies. However, this felt odd, as if I could feel him drifting away from me, one evening workout at a time. The most awful aspect was his attempt to make. It made me feel weird to notice. I inquired about the perfume's scent, and he said that it came from cleaning supplies at the gym. As I brought up his new clothing, he asserted that his previous ones were being exhausted. When I asked, he pretended that I was being rude late at night, domineering and unhelpful of his career. But now I had hard evidence. Concrete proof that my intuition was, yes, I put the tube in my pocket. I returned inside, my thoughts racing, with potential. I could go straight up to him, but I knew Vincent sufficiently to realize that he would refute everything and most likely receive upset with me for prying into his trap. I could employ a personal investigator, but that felt both costly and degrading. Alternatively, I may use my human resources, what my training had instructed me to do, when addressing issues at work, get additional details, and create a strategic answer. In the days that followed, I developed into an investigator in my own marriage. I began listening more intently to Vincent's patterns. On Mondays, he worked late. Fridays and Wednesdays are always going home at around 10 o'clock with tales about his devoted client. Kylie was always just out of the shower. Upon arriving home, he claimed his facilities were superior to ours. The phone was always buzzing with what he were alerts from fitness apps. I also worked in social media, investigation. It was quick to 23. Kylie Morrison may be found on Instagram. 10 years old, blonde, and possessed the type of synthetically boosted curves that needed both a healthy genetic makeup and a competent surgeon. There were numerous workout pics on her page, and motivational sayings about living your age is but a number, and she lives her best life. Has just begun sharing videos of her workouts, which are always recorded from attractive angles that highlighted her technique and the powerful hands of her trainer directing her shape. The instructor was clearly Vincent, but his expression was just out of picture, generally. But I heard his voice providing support, his chuckle when she made humor, and his hands in particular. Those hands have been my spouse for more than 20 years. On Monday, the videos were uploaded. Every Wednesday and Friday night, approximately the same period when Vincent was purportedly enhancing her flexibility training. There were a lot of angry comments, men's thirsty reactions and emoticons, inquiring about personal training accessibility. In response to a few of them, Kylie winky expressions and assurances that her, the best and most knowledgeable trainer, how can all the kinks be worked out? What a video pushed me over the brink. Published on Friday of last week. Recorded in what appeared to be a private apartment or studio rather than the main gym. Kylie was stretching on the floor, seemed more suitable for an adult, more of an entertainment website than a fitness regular. Vincent's voice may also be clearly audible in the background. That's fantastic, sweetie. Hold on to that stance for me. He called her, baby. Sweetheart. I was sitting at my Brightrise office. Systems, purportedly examining staff files, but I'm actually preparing my answer to this treachery. I had a choice, the elevated route. I could have brought my bags and, like a responsible adult, filed for divorce. Adult. I could have gone up to both of them and sought apology and explanations. I chose to be inventive instead, If Vincent desired to use tubes to play games of lubrication, after which we intended to play a game. However, this time I intended to regulate the regulations, and I intended to ensure that all parties involved gained knowledge, a lesson they would always remember. That I woke up on Saturday morning with I hadn't felt clear in months. Vincent was soundly snoring while still asleep, next to me as if he didn't care in the entire world. Slipping from my bed, I made traveling to the kitchen, where I began my day while sipping coffee and enjoying a nice particular shopping list. I went to Home Depot first. I strolled across the aisles with assurance, as a person who was fully aware of her searching. In the section on glue, I discovered what I required: Gorilla Adhesive Professional Caliber, the type that establishes a quick, lasting connection that may only be divided using industrial solvents or, in severe situations, pharmaceutical intervention. The young cashier hardly raised her head as my transaction was rung up by him. Developing a project? He inquired in a courteous lack of interest in someone earning the bare minimum pay. You could say that, I said with a smile, charmingly. Something that must remain forever. A medical supply store was my second destination. Shop where I bought a big syringe, the type that is utilized to administer drugs to animals. When the cashier inquired about my horse ownership, I informed her that I was assisting a friend with her ranch animals. One more little lie in what was turning into an extremely calculated action. Vincent was taking a shower at home, preparing for what he said was a training session on Saturday morning with a new customer who was only able to meet on weekends. Once more, I heard him humming. That same happy noise that now made my skin creep. I labored diligently and rapidly in the kitchen. With the syringe, I took out each lubricating drop from the tube I had in his pickup. Afterward, with the accuracy of someone who have years of experience overseeing staff advantages and safety procedures at work, I put the Gorilla Glue back in it. The consistency was strikingly comparable, and the tube was perfectly retracted. Unless someone managed to extract it and looked it over carefully, they would never understand the distinction. I cleaned the tube, clearing away any traces of fingerprints, and returned it to Vincent's driver's seat, just as I had discovered it. The heart was racing with a concoction of thrill and contentment. It was more than merely catching a dishonest. This was to make sure that the repercussions of his behavior would include instant, indisputable, and not to be forgotten. After taking a shower, Vincent came out looking as though he was going to a photo session, rather than attending a training session. He had cut his beard, applied the pricey I had given him cologne for Christmas, and was dressed in athletic attire that most likely more expensive than my auto insurance. I asked naively, "Big session today?" ignoring my morning crossword puzzle. Indeed, this new customer is indeed inspired. It could take several hours, he stated, looking at his image in the another look at the hallway mirror. "Okay, I said, "you look motivated too," letting a tiny bit of sarcasm seep into my voice. He gave me a kiss on top of my head, the identical gesture he used before been providing me with for months. "I cherish you, sweetie," waiting up if I'm late. I saw him go. Additionally, as soon as his truck vanished down the road, I placed the second part of my put the plan into action. I gave Vincent a call. Mother, Doris, who was around 20 Scottsdale, is just a few minutes away. "It's Karen. Doris, are you occupied today?" I was considering having a girls' day, pedicures and breakfast, perhaps. Doris was happy. At 74, she didn't receive as many invitations to social events as she. She had always liked me, and she used to superior than what Vincent most likely earned. She had been joking around recently regarding Vincent's appearance, distinct, and just as she dreamed he was being kind to me. "Honey, that sounds amazing. Must I come get you?" "I'll come fetch you, actually. I must spend some time outside the house." Excellent. This would prove my alibi and guarantee that I was not in the vicinity of the area while Vincent and his student of flexibility found my small change to their plans for the afternoon. At midday, I picked up Doris, and we went to a hip Old Town brunch destination, Scottsdale. She had on one of her vibrant suits, and had obviously worked hard into her look, anticipating our excursion. When we got comfortable in our booth, I felt a little bad about getting involved, even subtly, her in my retribution scheme. However, I was also aware that if my strategy succeeded, eventually she would discover the truth regarding her son's actions. In any case, Karen, you look beautiful today, yet you appear somewhat strained. Is everything all right? Are you and Vincent in agreement? Doris inquired, looking at me through her glasses as she looked over the menu. Oh, you understand how, yes, it is. There are ups and downs in marriage, I remarked as I sipped my mimosa. Recently, Vincent has been working a lot. Many new customers who require more pay attention. Well, when Doris spoke, something in her I looked up at the tone. He has consistently been, even as a boy, he was well liked by women. I fear sometimes that he also inherited his father's charisma in large measure, and not enough of his common wisdom. Doris had never been so blunt in her life, been about Vincent's shortcomings as a person, and I was taken aback. I had always believed she was unaware of her son's flaws, like the majority of mothers. Did he tell you anything about his job lately? I inquired thoughtfully. He brought up a young lady who has been using a large portion of his time, stated that she was extremely committed but necessary specific instruction. After a moment, Doris added with a knowing, "Consider this. I've been here long enough to understand the typical nature of specialized training meetings in relation to fairly young midlife transitions for both men and women crisis." I almost choked when eating my mimosa. Doris. I'm not blind, honey. Vincent's dad experienced the same thing when he became 50, began purchasing sports vehicles and having a relationship with his secretary. She tapped the table across from her. My hand. The distinction is that you're not the type of A woman who will tolerate that. Nonsense. Vincent is also not intelligent enough to understand what he's going to lose. For the following 2 hours, we discussed everything, excluding Vincent's adultery, even if it hovered between us. Like the heat of the desert. I heard stories from Doris regarding the transgressions of her late husband and the way she had dealt with them in a blend of strategic thinking and dignity retaliation that more impressed me than I wanted to acknowledge. As we made our way to the quay, she remarked nail salon in order to ensure that the punishment appropriate for the offense and that it taught me something. Men enjoy, according to Vincent and his father, they're so clever. But in reality, they're merely foreseeable. At 3 p.m., while we were gathering for our painted toenails in complementary hues of, my phone buzzed with a text message, Coral Pink, from Vincent. The session is getting long. Most likely, it will be late before I get home. Don't hold on. I showed Doris the message, who gave an eye roll. On time. I said, she said, his dad used to forward the identical types of communications. A peculiar calmness washed over me. Me looking at my phone. At this point, Kylie and Vincent were most likely doing well, into their workout session for flexibility. I pictured them in whatever private the place where they had been doing their encounters, believing them to be extremely intelligent and taciturn. I thought about Vincent. After grabbing his special lubricant, certain of his routine, fully not knowing that his spouse had changed his device of adultery into a tool of fairness. Then I settled down and said, "You know what, Doris? Back in my chair for a pedicure. I believe that today will be excellent day." She grinned at me with contentment of a female viewer of this tale previously and was fully aware of how it was progressing. To finish, Doris and I were browsing at 400 p.m. via an Old Town antique store, valuing and exchanging antique jewelry tales from our childhood. The afternoon was going just as I had prepared, a flawless alibi packed with timestamps, witnesses, and receipts that would demonstrate that I was far from the scene of what I hoped would happen. Once more, my phone buzzed. This time, it wasn't Vincent's words, but an alert from the local app that a local person was reporting odd action involving emergency vehicles. My heart began to race, but I maintained my expressionless as I went on looking at an old bracelet. Doris remarked, "Oh my," as she examined her own telephone. "My neighbor is posting about fire trucks in your local area. I hope everything is fine." "Fire engines?" I inquired, leaving only the I spoke with just the perfect amount of worry. I hope none of our neighbors are experiencing difficulty. Crisis. After we completed our shopping, I took the wheel. Doris at home, continuing the discussion light and resisting the temptation to look at my phone all the time. When I eventually dropped, she squeezed my hand as she left for her home, hand prior to exiting the vehicle. Remember, whatever comes next, sweetheart, that you're worthy of more than you've been receiving. And occasionally, the cosmos has a method for ensuring that people receive just what they are due. Returning to my area by car felt too short and eternal. As I pivoted on my street, I noticed a tiny neighbors gathered in a mass on the pavement, with a lot of people holding their phones and speaking in ecstatic hushes. There were no longer any emergency vehicles, yet there was still a sense of scandal. I walked over after parking in my driveway to Janet, my neighbor, who was almost pulsing with enthusiasm. "You simply missed all the drama, Karen. The fire service had to react to. 3 doors down is that Airbnb house. It seems that 2 individuals became stuck. While they were together, she stopped dramatic private actions." I said, "Stuck together?" letting my eyes to enlarge with sincere interest. "An accident involving adhesives of some sort. They couldn't be separated by paramedics, so the fire department had to be called in, utilizing specialized tools. They were carrying them while still attached to stretchers, wrapped with bed linens. It was similar to something from a motion picture." An additional Bob, a neighbor, added his voice. "My spouse received her Ring camera captured the entire event. They say it could become viral. The guy looked familiar. Did he not? That gym trainer on the 32nd Street?" I felt my heart racing with a blend of disbelief and satisfaction. In fact, it had worked. The strategy had gone more smoothly than I had anticipated. "The Sundale fitness trainer?" I asked, without malice. "My hubby may be employed there. I hope nobody we know was involved." "Janet, it's difficult to discern with the bed linens," stated. "However, whoever it was will need to explain a lot of things." The blaze. They had never seen anything, the chief claimed. "Enjoy it." It seems that whatever they utilized was the strength of industry. I excused myself and entered with trembling hands, a little bit as I shut the front door behind me. In my kitchen silence, I gave myself a little moment of unadulterated, pure contentment. For months, Vincent believed he was so astute, so discreet, so much more intelligent compared to his dull wife, who spent her days managing workplace benefits and employee safety procedures. However, he had forgotten how dull he is. The wife was extremely skilled at handling circumstances that needed to be addressed specificity, tactical preparation, and a knowledge of cause and effect. My phone rang. Vincent's phone number showed up on the display, and I allowed it to voicemail. After that, it kept ringing. I brewed some tea for myself and took a seat in order to await whatever justification he intended to try to provide me. Vincent arrived home around 8 p.m. 3 hours strolling stiffly, later than usual, and seeming as though he had experienced combat zone. He had unkempt hair. His P's attire differed from his own, departed the morning, and his expression was flushed by something I could only explain. As a result of shame combined with panic was hardly restrained. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, attempting to sound informal but utterly unsuccessful. "How did your time with my mother go?" "Wonderful," I said, without raising my gaze from my book. "We had breakfast, received pedicures, went shopping, and very unwinding. How did your training go?" I saw him strain to determine how much to inform me. His jaw was clenched in silence, for it took him a few moments before he decided. Air was difficult. It had to be shortened, due to an urgent situation. "Oh no. What sort of emergency?" I inquired with flawless. "I hope your client is doing well. She is only a minor, therefore she will be all right. Mishap in the gym. Nothing major." The splendor of Vincent's circumstances was that he was unable to be honest with me without confessing his extramarital affair. However, he furthermore failed to come up with a lie that would justify his search as though he has undergone a medical crisis. He was caught between his adultery and his pride, and observing his wriggling was more fulfilling than what I had expected. "That is awful. What sort of mishap?" I pressed gently. "Just equipment failure. The fitness center is managing it, insurance, as well as that. He was presently perspiring in spite of our air. I'm going to take a shower." Nice suggestion, I answered kindly. Additionally, Janet stated that there was end of her zen. There is some excitement in the neighborhood today. Ambulances and fire engines at down the street from that Airbnb property. Sort of a strange emergency. Halfway to the bathroom, Vincent froze. His face was turning pale. Didn't it? Learn about that. According to her, 2 persons received somehow they got trapped together. Can you imagine? How likely is it that something like that will occur? And occurring on the same day that you experienced an is there a problem with the equipment at work? Vincent's expression on his face was priceless. A mixture of sheer horror and the growing awareness that his wife could understand more than she was admitting. In the days that follow, the entire extent of the catastrophe emerged. The ring it was true that camera footage had gone viral, obtaining millions of views on social media sites. Although Vincent and Kylie's expressions weren't quite evident because of the bed linens, sufficient identifying information was displayed that members of the local fitness community discovered who they were quite soon. Vincent was sacked by Sunningdale Fitness right away, referring to a morality clause in his job contract and the drawbacks publicity that has an impact on their company. A few of his other clients were able to their meetings, unwilling to be connected to the controversy. Kylie, who'd been constructing a social media as a fitness influencer, discovered tin. There were jokes all over her comment sections regarding being confined to her trainer and forming strong bonds when working out. The story was reported by the local news as a hilarious human interest article. However, they took care to avoid mentioning identities. The report was presented by the anchor, with hardly any repressed giggling, characterizing it as a warning concerning label, reading cautiously, and evidence that some exercise professional equipment is needed. And handling. Vincent made an effort to claim his innocence. For precisely 3 days prior to the weight of proof and embarrassment on social media broke him down, and he opened himself about everything. I was seated at our kitchen table when sipping coffee and listening to the patience of a person who was already aware all the information he was about to divulge. Karen, it just occurred. I had no strategy. It was because she was so young and eager, and both you and I had been. After being so far away, she forced me to believe that I was still appealing and essential. And your truck's lubrication below seat? I inquired coolly. His visage crumpled. How long have you known? Enough time to make an educated choice regarding our marriage, I answered, transferring the divorce documents over the table in his direction. The joy of seeing him come to, that his treachery had been exposed, recorded, and systematically disciplined, was well worth the time I spent planning, invested in this retaliation. Vincent's extramarital affair and the embarrassing. He lost money as a result of its exposure, much more than his marriage alone. Word swiftly expanded throughout Phoenix's close-knit fitness group, which makes it, finding a job is very impossible for him, in the capacity of a personal trainer. Eventually, he accepted a position stocking shelves at a big box shop, bookcases for a little portion of his earlier revenue. Kylie removed her social media accounts, and returned to live in Ohio. Her influencer aspirations with her parents destroyed by ridicule and memes. The both of them were followed by a viral video, all around, a constant reminder of their bad decisions, and their undervaluing a woman they believed was too dull to defend himself. They had discovered in the most conspicuous manner, actions may have repercussions, and that occasionally those outcomes include industrial-grade adhesive. During the divorce, I kept the house, settlement, and utilized my portion of, finally, Vincent's retirement account travel to Italy, which I had always wanted to do, desired. While I sat at a Rome cafe, observing the sunset over historic streets and drinking wine that is more expensive than Vincent's daily pay, I thought about the peculiar voyage that had led me here to this peaceful moment. Occasionally, devastation is not the goal of retaliation. It's about accuracy, endurance, and making sure that justice is carried out using only the ideal quantity of permanent glue.